Hello, ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another film review. And today's film review is none other than David Brent. So, what is David Brent Life on the Road about? Well, David Brent Life on the Road is following on and in a kind of sequel-esque attire to the Office series from the early 2000s. So, for those who haven't watched The Office, David Brent was basically the boss. He was the boss of The Office, and eventually he decides, well, I say decides, he ends up leaving The Office due to circumstances. So now we catch up with David as he has moved on to a new and different company. He is a salesperson. He is no longer the boss. He instead is a kind of executive slash, well, he's a kind of middleman, you might as well put it. And essentially, he has decided in this film that enough's enough. He is going to go on the road with a group from his studio and essentially see how far he can go. Throughout the course of the film, his band and his mate really struggled to put up with his antics. From overpaying for things to taking them from hotel to hotel to on top of it wanting to pay out for the gigs, the booze, and pretty much just to get what he wants. However, throughout the course of this film, it's quite clear that David doesn't quite know what he wants. He wants to achieve something. Yes, he wants to leave a legacy behind and he wants to show people and show the world what he can be. But maybe what he can be and what he is are two different things. As the tour begins to plunge, he begins to go to a company in hopes of pretty much putting his image out there and hoping that that will give him some more stardom. However, upon going on the radio, even though he has done all these things, it doesn't seem like people are paying much attention to him. Even his own mate is kind of starting to push the button with him and say that he's pushing things out too far. One of the standout characters, I would have to say, is the one played by Doc Brown. He plays a youngster who is essentially tricked by a salesman into being his kind of up and coming protege. And as the two end up bickering towards the end of this film because Doc Brown's character is offered a record job by a separate company, he finds himself in a situation in which he can understand David's kind of mentality. It's not necessarily that David doesn't believe that he can be successful, but more to the point, the fact that David has been pushed around himself so much that he's just kind of warning everyone the stakes that the world comes with. However, after a couple antics of David having to pay the lads just to go out for a drink with him and paying so much money out on the gig, his second in command, one of the sound guys, decides that he will pay out for a snow machine just so that they can end the tour on a high and go out for beers. David then returns back to his office, in which him and his old colleagues begin to catch up. However, after a couple of his colleagues trying to insult him for dreaming too big, as they say, David points out to the people inside the office that they may be managers, he may be a deputy manager his whole life, but he tried, and that's what's important. And he's not wrong, of course. His love interest in this story, Pauline Gray, sticks up for him by basically chucking a glass of water over one of his colleagues. Now, since the beginning of this film, Pauline is kind of that shy office temp girl who works beside David. She doesn't necessarily agree with some of his remarks, but as even the band point out in the end of this, it's not necessarily that David is racist or phobic or anything to stuff. He just is very blunt with the way he talks about things and doesn't necessarily think before he speaks. So, what did I think of David Brent, Life on the Road? I think it's a very unique and very great spin off to The Office. I definitely feel like Ricky Gervais and um, Doc Brown's best moment is when they both sing Equality Street. However, I do feel like even though I absolutely love how David Brent is treated throughout this and The Office, I do feel like he holds the plot back a lot. I feel like this film is very much carried by Doc Brown and the rest of the cast's performances, whereas Ricky Gervais is definitely trying his best and has kept up the great backstory of David Brent, but Brent really does start to slow the plot down, at least until he starts going off the rails. And for that reason, I give David Brent Life on the Road a solid 7 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next film review. Until then, goodbye, good night, and stay beautiful, you beautiful people.